Hi, my name's Andy Burgess. I'm a product specialist for Aston Martin. What I'd like to do is take you for a test drive in our DBX to show it's not just a comfortable SUV, but also an SUV that drives like a sports car. So before we go for our test drive, you'll find your driver mode buttons just here on the center console. There'll be an up button and a down button. So when you start the car, it will start in its GT setting. That's its default setting. Then if we press the mode button going down, that will take us to an individual setting, which is what I'll go through in just a second. If we press it once more, that will take us to sport setting, and once more again takes us to Sport Plus. So to set your individual configuration, you must use your menu system, and you should really only do this when you're stationary. So to do this, we'll turn on your menu system, wait for the screen to come up. We'll go across to vehicle, so we'll use our dial or our touchpad to do that. Once we get to vehicle, we'll press that, and then we get into driver modes. So we go down to driver modes, individual configuration, and then you have the 4 areas that you can individualize: suspension, steering, drive, and exhaust system. So if you press each one, you can have it in GT or Sport. We'll choose GT. In steering, you can have GT or Sport. I'm going to choose Sport. And for drive, what it means by that is the throttle and the gearbox. I'm going to go for Sport on that as well. Exhaust system, I'm going to go Sport Plus because I want to hear that Aston Martin sound all the time. So we go for Sport Plus. And it tells you on the left-hand side of the screen what you've just chosen. So suspension is going to be GT, nice and compliant. Steering is going to be sportier, so a little bit heavier. The gearbox and the throttle is going to be sporty, so it's going to hold on to a gear a little bit longer for me. And I'm going to have that lovely sporty exhaust noise. So you'll obtain that when you go to your individual setting from your GT setting. And really, when you're doing the test drive, you'll discover as you drive the things that you like and you don't like. Some of us will like a softer ride, some of us will like a firmer ride. So after about 20 minutes, you'll discover as you use your mode buttons, which one you really like. And then maybe you could pull over and then go into your individual configurator and then choose which ones you want to go to. Or you could just use the standard settings, GT, Sport, or Sport Plus. So you also have your off-road modes as well, your Terrain and Terrain Plus. So if you were in GT mode, you'd press your up mode button. That would take you to Terrain. Press it again, that would take it then to Terrain Plus. But you can't go into those unless you're doing below certain speeds. So for Terrain, you need to be below 45 miles an hour, and for Terrain Plus, you need to be below 30 miles an hour. What it also do, it will change your gearbox software and help the car hold on to maybe second gear, because you don't want to go to maybe first gear or third gear if you're in ice and snow or deep mud. Also, when we're driving, I'll take you through some of the safety features. We'll use the lane assist button, and we'll also use the adaptive cruise control on the left-hand side of the steering wheel here. So I think that's enough. I think we'll get going on a test drive now. So if I put my foot on the brake, and we press the engine button once, that gives us a loud start. We're in GT, which is its default mode. So we'll press the D button, which obtains the first gear in automatic, and off we go. Okay, so we're in our GT mode. So that is, again, our relaxed mode in terms of relaxed throttle, relaxed suspension, very soft, very compliant. Our engine note is very quiet as well. The valve is closed in the exhaust system. And also our gearbox is giving us the highest gear possible for the speed, nice and efficient. So I can feel the steering's very easy to use in GT mode. So if I reach down and press the down mode button twice, so that will skip the individual setting and go straight to Sport. So straight away you can hear that it drops engine note. It goes into from 5th gear, went to 4th gear, and it's holding on to that gear that little bit longer. It's not changing up to 5th, it's holding on to 4th. I can feel a little bit more weight in the steering, and also I can hear the engine note a little bit more, and that classic Aston Martin roar from the exhaust system. Throttle's much more responsive as well. I just touch it and it starts to respond. So there's a definite difference between GT and Sport. Also, when I brake, you have a little blip from the throttle as well as it changes down. Back on the throttle, I can definitely feel more pickup now in the sport mode. If we reach down again, press it down once more, we go to plus, and straight away it went from 5th gear to 4th gear actually. As soon as I touch the throttle, you can really hear that lovely Aston Martin sound now. And as soon as I touch the brake to brake, you can hear it straight away, it shifts down. 3rd gear, and you hear that little pop and crackle from the exhaust. So that's in Sport Plus mode. And I can feel the suspension that little bit firmer, and again the steering that little bit heavier. So we pull away from the traffic lights, we're in Sport Plus mode, and it held on to 1st gear a little bit longer there. Same with 2nd gear, it's holding on to that gear. 3rd gear as well. And as soon as I start to brake for this roundabout here, you'll hear it'll drop from 4th to 3rd very quickly, a little pop and a crackle from it into 2nd gear now. So that's Sport Plus, like I say, really alive actually. The car feels like it's lots of fun to drive actually. So we're going through a 30 mile an hour zone here, so I'm going to go back into GT. So I'm going to click up 3 modes into GT. There we go. And straight away, the car's in 5th gear now. The engine notes quietened down. The suspension feels softer. It's actually gone to 6th gear now. So it's really as most efficient as it possibly can in GT. Steering feels a bit lighter as well. When we go from GT to Sport, you go through another mode called Individual. And Individual is the one that we set up earlier on. 4 elements of it that we can change depending on our mood, depending on what we really like. If I reach down and we hit it twice on the down, that takes it into Sport. So straight away it goes from 7th gear to 5th gear. I can feel the throttle just tighten a little bit. I can feel the suspension a little bit firmer, the damper setting just that little bit firmer. Starting to feel the road a little bit more. Steering feels a bit more weighted. As soon as I touch the throttle, it starts to pick up a lot more readily than when it was in GT. It's a little bit noisier than it was in GT. But if we want to go one more, we go to Sport Plus. So we reach down, we go down again one more setting. Straight away it goes from 6th to 5th gear. And again, I can feel the car just tighten up that little bit more. Steering's a little bit more weighted. The car feels really good actually. Just a little bit of power. It starts to move, and you can really hear that engine note now. So I'm going to start to brake a little bit. As soon as I touch the brake, it starts to shift down. So there'll be certain things when you're driving the car after you're on your test drive that you'll really like. You might like the engine note when it's in Sport Plus. You might like the suspension when it's in GT. And you might like the steering when it's in Sport. So that's where individual settings comes into its own. So you can go into that when you're stationary and go and choose each one of those settings that you really liked. So that when you go from GT, on the down button, it goes into individual and it picks up those settings that you really like. So other safety features that are standard on this DBX is lane assist. So if we press the lane assist button just here on the transmission tunnel, you'll see the green light come on and the word on. So now if we move across to a white line, or it picks up the white line that we're moving lanes, then it will give a vibration through the steering just to give us a heads up that we've done that. It's really for motorway driving, I would say. Just gives you that little kick through the steering, little vibration. So we'll turn that back off, and it says off now. We've also got another feature that's standard on this car, which is adaptive cruise control. That's operated from the left-hand side of the steering wheel. So we're doing 59 miles an hour at the moment in the 60 mile an hour limit. So I'm going to set that speed. So I reach down, just push the toggle up, and it tells me I've set it at 58 miles an hour. So I'll keep it at that speed at 58 miles an hour. Now, if I press the left-hand side distance button, that means we can change the distance between the car in front before it starts to brake. So let's bring it a little bit closer. So if a car was to come in front of me now, it's a little bit slower than me, it would detect it on the radar and start to brake and keep a nice distance away from that car. At any time you want to cancel it, just press the brake pedal and then cancel. It comes up on the dash and then your cruise control is cancelled. If you want to go back to the speed that you were at, then again you just flick the toggle switch up and it goes back up to that speed that you were at. So there's another 2 modes within this as well, which are your off-road modes, which are your terrain and your terrain plus. Now there's speed limitations on those 2 modes. you have to be doing below 30 mile an hour for Terrain Plus and below 45 miles an hour for Terrain. But if you were to accidentally move the arrow up and go to Terrain, like I have done there, it doesn't hurt the car. It just comes up with warnings saying please reduce speed, because obviously it can't put the ride height up because you're going too fast. Yeah. Same if you went to Terrain Plus, it's not going to raise the car because you're going too fast. So we just come back down to our GT mode. But if you were below those speed parameters, then it would raise the car in Terrain to 20 millimeters. If you were in Terrain Plus, it would raise it a further 25 millimeters. So a combined a height of 45 millimeters. And also change the gearbox setting. It would hold on to second gear longer, obviously because you could be on mud and snow. And the throttle would be more relaxed and the steering would be in its GT mode as well. So also when you're driving along, you'll notice your ride height is shown on the dash as well. So when you're in GT mode, which is its default mode, it will show the number 1 and in a blue. So that is your default setting in terms of ride height. If you were to go to Sport or Sport Plus, that would drop the ride height by 15 millimeters. So we'll do that. So we go into Sport, and that drops the ride height by 15 millimeters. And now it's showing 0. So that is as low as it can go in the settings. So we're coming back into our parking area now. So I'm going to go into GT mode. So I don't want to draw too much attention to myself. So it quietens the exhaust, makes my steering a lot lighter now, makes my throttle a lot softer as well. GT is a good mode for town driving. So another nice feature on this car, which is standard, is the 360 cameras. So if I put the 360 cameras on, you have the view in the center console there. And using your dial or your touchpad, you can scroll through all the different settings and different views of the 360 camera. So at the moment I've got this one on all 4 wheels, which is good for parking. And I scroll, and now we've got a rear view, and now we've got another rear view, but slightly narrower. So this is a really useful feature for when you're about to park the car. It'll only work under 10 miles an hour. Once you go over 10 miles an hour, then that screen will go black, for obvious reasons, because it wants to draw your attention to the road. So when you go on your test drive, use your mode buttons, find the settings that you like, and then when you're stationary, you could go into those settings and do an individualization configuration for what you found was the best for you. So when you go into individual mode, then that picks up all those things that you really liked. Play with it, enjoy it. That's the main thing, is have fun with this DBX, because it really is a fun car to drive.